Hi everyone, in this video we're going to talk about how to compare decimal numbers using both models and number lines. So to get us started, I'm going to pull up week 3, day number 2 of our packet and show you what example problems we're going to be talking about. So on the first page of day number 2, we're going to take a look at this problem right here that has us model each decimal as a fraction of 1,000. Using base 10 blocks. Then you have to compare the decimal using the greater than or less than sign. On day 2 continued, we're going to look at how to compare 125 thousandths to 185 thousandths using a number line. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and pull up some work that I've already done for these problems to help show you the steps to figuring this out. So, to compare 125 thousandths to 525 thousandths, one way to do that is to draw models, base 10 models. Okay, so if you watched the last video, base 10 models are those where you have all the cubes in either a flat, a row, or a long, or just the individual cubes. Okay, so this right here, this flat, that represents the number of tenths in your decimal, okay, because it takes 10 of these to make one whole. These right here represent the number of hundredths in your decimal, and the individual cubes are the number of thousandths. So for 125 thousandths, or 125 over 1,000, I drew one flat, because that represents my tenths place. I have 1 in the tenths place. I drew 2 longs because I have 2 in the hundredths place. And I drew 5 of these single squares because I have 5 in my thousandths place. If we look over here at 525 thousandths, you'll see that I drew 5 of the flats because that represents 5 over 10, or my tenths place, right? I drew 2 of the longs because that is the same as 2 over 100, or the 2 in my hundredths place. And I drew 5 of these individual ones because that's the same as 5 over 1,000, or the 5 in my thousandths place. Okay, so that's how I would draw those out. After you draw them out, you have to look at them and you have to say which one has a greater value here, which one has more tenths. Or if the number of tenths is the same, then we're going to look and see which one has more hundredths. So one way that I like to compare decimals like this is I start by looking in my first place. Which is greater in the tenths place, 1 or 5? Well, I know the 5 is greater than 1, so this number right here, 525, that has to be the greater number. Okay, so for that problem, you are going to go ahead and write 125 thousandths is less than 525 thousandths. Okay, so in that space, you're going to write your less than sign. Now let's say we had 523 and 525 thousandths. Okay, now let's say this was 0.523, this one stays 0.525. If I'm comparing them, I'm once again going to start with my tenths place. See if one of the numbers is greater. Well, they're not because they're both 5, so then I move to the hundredths place. Is one of them greater? No, they're both 2s. So I would finally look at the thousandths place. And I see that 5 is greater than 3, so I know that this number would be bigger. Or you can draw it out using a model like this. Okay, so those are the ways to solve that problem. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to look at day 2 continued, where it has you draw these problems on a number line. Okay, so the first problem there is 125 thousandths compared to 185 thousandths. So I set up a number line here where my lowest number on the number line was 1/10 or 0.100, and my greatest was 0.2 or 0.200. And the reason I chose those is because looking at them, I know that neither of these numbers is less than 1 or 1/10, and neither of these numbers is greater than 2/10. So they both fall somewhere in between here. Okay, and the reason I chose those is because it will give me 10 even points in between to graph out. Okay. So we're going to start with 125 thousandths, or 125 over 1,000. And I'm going to see, where does this number fit on my number line? So I labeled 110 thousandths, which is the same as 11 over 100. This would be 12 over 100, and so on, until 20 over 100. So I see that I have 0.125. See, I have 0.12 here. That 5 in the middle tells me that it is greater than 0.12, but since it's not a 3 here, I know it's got to be less than 0.13. Okay, so in my head, I know 25 is halfway in between 20 and 30. So I went ahead and I plotted a point right there halfway in the middle to represent 0.125, or 125 thousandths. Now I'm going to do the same for 185 thousandths. I go down here, since it's 0.185, I know it has to be over 0.180, or 180, and it has to be less than 190 thousandths, because we don't have a 9 here. I know that 185 is halfway in between 180 and 190, so I plotted a point at 185 thousandths. Okay, and I'm going to label both of those just to make it a little bit more clear. This one was 0.125. Right here. And this one down here was 0.185. Okay, and so then when we look at it, the number that I plotted furthest to the right, that's going to be my biggest decimal number here. So that means that 0.185, or 185 thousandths, is greater than 125 thousandths. This would be read as 125 thousandths is less than 185 thousandths. Okay, because this sign right here is our less than sign. So I hope that this helps. That is how you compare decimal numbers using both models and fractions. If you have any more questions, please feel free to let me know, but in the meantime, stay safe.